The evening air was crisp as Amara stepped out of her car, smoothing down the front of her burgundy dress. She had chosen it carefully for tonight, their 5th wedding anniversary dinner. The restaurant, with its warm lights and fancy entrance, had been James's pick. 5 years of marriage, she thought. Where had the time gone? James was already waiting at the entrance, checking his watch. His face brightened briefly when he spotted her, but Amara noticed how quickly his smile faded. Something was off, but she pushed the thought away. Not tonight. Tonight was supposed to be special. "You're late," James said, leaning in for a quick peck on her cheek. His cologne was the one she had gifted him last Christmas. "Only by 10 minutes, Amara replied, trying to keep her tone light. Traffic was bad on Main Street. "They're doing road work again." James nodded, not quite meeting her eyes as he held the door open. "I already called ahead to hold our reservation." The hostess led them through the restaurant past tables of laughing couples and families celebrating special occasions. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow over everything. It was beautiful. Exactly the kind of place you'd want to celebrate an anniversary. So why did Amara feel this knot forming in her stomach? "Your table, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," the hostess said with a practiced smile, gesturing to a corner table adorned with a small vase of roses. James pulled out Amara's chair, a gesture that would have seemed romantic if his movements weren't so stiff, so formal. She sat down, arranging her dress carefully around her. "Thank you for making the reservation," Amara said, reaching for her water glass. "This place is lovely." James shrugged, picking up his menu immediately. It had good reviews online. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, not like the silences they used to share in the early days of their relationship. Back then, they could sit for hours just being together, not needing to fill every moment with words. Now the silence felt loaded, like a room filling with smoke. "How was work today?" Amara tried again, determined to break through whatever wall James had put up. Same as always. Clients making impossible demands, bosses expecting miracles. He didn't look up from his menu. "You?" "Busy. The Thompson campaign is taking up all my time. But we're finally making progress. Actually, Mr. Thompson himself complimented my presentation yesterday. That's the promotion you got last month, right?" James finally looked at her, but his eyes held something Amara couldn't quite place. "Resentment? Envy?" "Yes, the one I told you about at dinner 3 times. She tried to keep the edge out of her voice, but failed. "Right. The big promotion. How could I forget?" James's tone was light, but his words felt heavy. A server approached with a practiced smile. "Good evening. Can I start you off with something from our wine list?" "We'll have the Cabernet Sauvignon," James said without consulting Amara. "Actually," she cut in, "I'd prefer the Pinot Noir if that's okay." James's jaw tightened slightly. "Fine, the Pinot Noir then." The server nodded and left, seemingly oblivious to the tension crackling between them. "You could have just gone with my choice," James muttered once the server was out of earshot. "I don't like Cabernet. You know that, do I? Hard to keep track of your preferences these days with how little we see each other." There it was, the real issue bubbling to the surface. "James, I've been working hard. This promotion is a big deal for me, for us. The extra income will help with the house renovations you wanted to start. Is that what you think this is about? Money?" James's voice remained low, but the intensity behind his words made Amara flinch. "Then what is it about? Because ever since I got this promotion, you've been acting like I did something wrong." The server returned with their wine before James could respond. They both fell silent as he poured 2 glasses and took their dinner orders. When he left, the moment had passed, or at least shifted. James swirled the wine in his glass, watching it catch the light. "Remember our first anniversary? That little Italian place downtown?" The sudden change in topic caught Amara off guard. "Of course. We couldn't afford much back then. You brought me a single rose you'd picked from Mrs. Henderson's garden next door." A ghost of a smile crossed James's face. "And you were so worried she'd call the cops on me." "Well, she did threaten you with her garden shears the week before for letting our dog run through her yard." Amara laughed, feeling some of the tension ease. "Those were simpler times," James said, his smile fading again. "We had nothing but each other. And now? Now we have everything except each other. You're always at work, taking calls during dinner, checking emails in bed. That's not fair. I'm working hard for our future, for all those plans we made together. Are they still our plans, though, or just yours?" James took a long sip of his wine. Amara felt a flash of anger. That's not true and you know it. Everything I do is with us in mind, is it? Because lately it feels like you're building a life I'm not part of. Like I'm just furniture in the background of your success story. The words stung because there was a kernel of truth in them. Amara had been absorbed in her work, coming home late, leaving early. But wasn't that what people did when opportunities came along? Seized them? I'm sorry you feel that way, she said carefully. But this promotion was something I worked for years to achieve. I thought you'd be happy for me. I was. I am. James sighed, running a hand through his hair. I just miss my wife. Is that so wrong? No, Amara admitted, reaching across the table for his hand. It's not wrong. I miss you too. But this phase won't last forever. Once I get the team properly set up, there's always a next phase. Amara. Another client, another project, another reason to miss dinner. Their appetizers arrived, artfully arranged plates that would have normally excited Amara. Now, she barely noticed what she was eating. What do you want me to do, James? Turn down opportunities? Stay in the same position forever just so I can be home by 6 every night? That's not what I'm saying and you know it. Then what are you saying? Because it sounds like you want me to choose between my career and our marriage. James leaned back in his chair, his food untouched. Maybe I'm just saying I want to be a priority in your life again. Not just something you fit in between meetings. The hurt in his voice made Amara's chest tighten. Had she really been so neglectful? She thought back over the past few months. The missed dinners, the late nights at the office. The weekends spent catching up on work while James watched TV alone. I never meant to make you feel less important, she said softly. This job, it demanded more than I expected. But I'm trying to find balance. Are you, though? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already chosen. Amara felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. This wasn't how their anniversary dinner was supposed to go. That's not fair, James. You know how hard I've worked for this. And what about how hard we've worked for this? He gestured between them. 5 years, Amara. 5 years of building something together. The main courses arrived, breaking the moment. They both fell silent as the server arranged the plates and asked if they needed anything else. They shook their heads in unison, and once again they were alone with their unfinished conversation. I got us tickets, Amara said after a moment, trying to salvage something of the evening, to that jazz festival you wanted to go to. Next weekend. I cleared my schedule. James looked surprised, then suspicious. Really, no emergency client meetings? No last-minute presentations? Really? The whole weekend, just us? He seemed to soften slightly. That would be nice. They ate in silence for a while, the tension still there but slightly less suffocating. Amara watched James as he ate, wondering when they had started feeling like strangers. Was it really just her job? Or was there something deeper? Something they'd been avoiding talking about for months, maybe years. How's the fish? She asked, trying to find neutral ground. Good. Yours? Good. More silence. Around them, other couples laughed and talked, sharing food and leaning in close to each other. Amara felt a pang of envy, remembering when she and James had been like that, unable to go 5 minutes without touching, without sharing some private joke or thought. We should do this more often, she said suddenly. Make time for just us. No work talk, no house problems, just us. James looked at her for a long moment as if assessing whether she meant it. I'd like that, he finally said. But actions speak louder than words, Amara. The comment stung, but she nodded. I know. I'll show you, I promise. The rest of the dinner passed with slightly less tension. They managed to talk about a movie they'd both seen recently, about James's mother's upcoming visit, about their neighbor's new dog. Surface topics, safe topics, not the deep currents running beneath their marriage, threatening to pull them under. By the time they finished their main courses, Amara felt drained. This evening that was supposed to celebrate their love had instead exposed all the cracks in their foundation. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe they needed to see the damage before they could repair it. I have something for you, James said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and placed it on the table between them. Amara looked at it, then at him, surprise written across her face. James, open it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny camera, like the one she had used when they first met, back when she dreamed of being a photographer before marketing had taken over her career path. You remembered, she whispered, touching the charm gently, Of course I did. I remember everything about you, Amara, even the parts you might have forgotten yourself. The words were both sweet and accusatory, and Amara didn't know whether to smile or cry. She settled for taking his hand across the table. Thank you. It's perfect. As James helped her put on the bracelet, their eyes met, and for a moment Amara saw the man she had fallen in love with. Kind, thoughtful, seeing her in ways no one else did. She vowed silently to find a way back to what they had been, to make room in her life for what truly mattered. What she didn't know was that the evening's tensions were far from over, and that the anniversary dessert being prepared in the kitchen would soon become the catalyst for a moment that would change everything. The bracelet caught the light as Amara turned her wrist, admiring how the tiny camera charm dangled delicately. Despite the tense dinner conversation, this gift had momentarily bridged the gap between them. It was thoughtful in a way that reminded her of the James she had fallen in love with, the man who noticed details, who remembered her long-abandoned dream of photography. It really is beautiful, she said, looking up to find James watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Was it longing, regret, or something else entirely? I'm glad you like it, he replied, his voice softer than it had been all evening. For a moment, the wall between them seemed to lower slightly. I had it custom-made. Took weeks to find someone who could make the camera charm just right. Amara felt a pang of guilt. While James had been planning this thoughtful gift, she had been buried in work, barely managing to book the jazz festival tickets at the last minute. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I love it. Thank you. The server approached their table again, this time with a knowing smile. Would you like to see our dessert menu? Or perhaps I could interest you in our special anniversary dessert. The chef prepares it tableside. Before Amara could respond, James nodded. Yes, we'll have the special dessert. There was a hint of his earlier irritation in his voice, as if the brief moment of connection had already passed. As the server walked away, Amara tried to recapture that fleeting warmth between them. Remember our wedding cake? How the top layer slid off when we tried to cut it? A small smile tugged at the corner of James's mouth. Your mother nearly had a heart attack, and my Uncle Pete couldn't stop laughing. We were still finding bits of frosting in my hair at the hotel that night. Amara chuckled, relieved to see James softening again. Your hair was a mess, but you were still the most beautiful bride I'd ever seen. For a moment they were back there, young and hopeful, standing hand in hand at the beginning of what they believed would be a perfect life together. But as quickly as the memory came, it faded, replaced by the reality of their current situation. James took a long sip of his wine, then set the glass down with deliberate care. Can I ask you something? The serious tone made Amara's stomach tighten. Of course. Are you happy? With us, I mean. The question hung in the air between them, heavier than it should have been for a couple celebrating 5 years of marriage. James, of course I am. Why would you ask that? He shrugged, not meeting her eyes. Because sometimes it feels like you're building a life that doesn't have room for me anymore. That's not true, Amara protested. But even as she said it, she wondered if there was some truth to his words. Had she been pushing him away without realizing it? Isn't it? You're never home. When you are, you're distracted. The last 3 times we planned to go out, you canceled for work. Even tonight, you were late. That's not fair. I've been working hard because this promotion is important. To who? James cut in. To you, to us? Because lately it seems like it's just about you and your career. Amara felt her temper rising. That's not true and you know it. Everything I do is for our future. For the life we planned together. Is it? Because the life we planned included having time for each other. It included maybe starting a family by now, but every time I bring that up you have another reason to wait. The mention of family hit a nerve. It was true that Amara had been hesitant about having children, always finding reasons to delay. First it was paying off student loans, then saving for a house, now establishing herself in her new position. I just want to be ready, she said, her voice small. Ready for what? The perfect time? There is no perfect time, Amara. Life doesn't work that way. Before she could respond, the server returned with another staff member wheeling a small cart. On it was an elaborate cake decorated with chocolate swirls and fresh berries. Our special anniversary dessert, the server announced with a flourish. A raspberry chocolate mousse cake with gold leaf detail. The cake was beautiful, clearly prepared with care. Under different circumstances, Amara would have been delighted. Now, it felt like an interruption to a conversation they desperately needed to finish. The servers made a show of placing the cake between them, lighting a small sparkler on top and wishing them a happy anniversary before retreating. Around them, a few diners glanced over, smiling at what appeared to be a romantic celebration. If only they knew. Amara thought, "It looks delicious," she said, trying to steer them back to safer ground. James just nodded, still clearly caught up in their earlier discussion. He picked up a fork and poked at the cake without enthusiasm. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Amara took a small bite of the cake, but it tasted like nothing in her mouth. Her mind was still spinning from James's accusations. Was he right? Had she been neglecting their relationship? Putting off their plans for a family? "About what you said," she began. "Let's not do this now," James interrupted, gesturing around at the restaurant. "Not on our anniversary. Then when? You're the one who brought it up, James. You can't just drop something like that and then refuse to discuss it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Fine, you want to talk about it? Let's talk. I feel like I'm losing you, Amara. Like every day you drift a little further away from me, from us, and I don't know how to pull you back." The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tighten. "I'm right here," she said softly. "I've always been right here. Have you? Because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you're always halfway out the door thinking about the next meeting, the next project, the next big thing." Amara wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Not completely, because in some ways he was right. She had been distracted, focused on proving herself at work, on building her career. "I never meant to make you feel like you weren't important," she said. "You are the most important person in my life, James." "Am I? Then why does it feel like I'm competing for your attention all the time?" Before she could answer, the server returned with the check, placing it discreetly at the edge of their table. "Whenever you're ready," he said with a polite smile before walking away. James glanced at the check, then pushed it toward Amara with a pointed look. "Your turn, isn't it?" The abrupt change of topic caught her off guard. "What? The bill?" "I paid last time we went out. Your turn." Amara stared at him, confused by the sudden shift from their emotional conversation to this petty point about money. I didn't realize we were keeping score." "We're not keeping score. We're being equal partners. Isn't that what you always talk about? Equality in relationships?" There was something in his tone that hadn't been there before, a bitterness that made Amara's skin prickle with unease. "James, what is this really about? Because it can't just be about who pays for dinner." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "It's about everything. About how you make triple what I make now but still expect me to pay for things. About how you're too busy for me but never too busy for work. About how every decision in our life seems to revolve around your career these days." Amara felt her face grow hot with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. People at nearby tables were beginning to glance their way. "That's not fair," she said, keeping her voice low. "I've never once complained about paying for anything. And I bought the jazz festival tickets for this weekend, remember? They weren't cheap." "Oh, so now you're keeping score." James's voice rose slightly, drawing more looks. "I'm not the one who brought up money," Amara hissed, conscious of the attention they were attracting. "You pushed the bill at me like I've been avoiding paying my share. Haven't you, though? When was the last time you actually reached for a check? When was the last time you thought about anyone but yourself?" The accusation stung all the more because Amara knew it wasn't true. She had always been conscientious about sharing expenses even before her promotion. If anything, she had been contributing more to their household lately, upgrading their appliances, paying for the new roof last fall. "That's not true and you know it," she said, her voice trembling slightly with the effort to keep it steady. "I've never once expected you to pay for everything, never." "Really? Then why do I feel like I'm always the one worrying about our finances while you're out buying new work clothes and fancy lunches with clients?" Amara couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't just about tonight's dinner bill. This was about something deeper, something that had apparently been festering for a long time. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm some selfish person who doesn't care about our finances? About our future?" James didn't answer directly. Instead, he pushed the bill closer to her. "Just pay it, Amara. It's your turn." She stared at him, at this man who suddenly seemed like a stranger. Where was this coming from? They had never fought about money before. Yes, she made more than him now, but that was a recent development. For most of their relationship, they had earned similar amounts and shared expenses without keeping tabs. "Fine," she said finally, reaching for her purse. "I'll pay. But we need to talk about what's really going on here, because this isn't about a dinner bill, isn't it? Or is it just that you don't like being called out on your behavior?" Amara pulled out her credit card and placed it on top of the bill with hands that weren't quite steady. "My behavior? What about yours? Picking a fight on our anniversary dinner? Making a scene in a public place? Oh, so now I'm making a scene? For asking my wife to pay her fair share?" A few heads turned in their direction, and Amara felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. This was getting out of hand. "James, please. Let's not do this here. Where should we do it then? At home, where you'll just retreat to your home office? Or maybe we should schedule an appointment between your meetings." The bitterness in his voice shocked her. This wasn't the James she knew. Something else had to be going on. "What's really bothering you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice gentle despite her rising frustration. "Because this can't just be about me working too much or who pays for dinner." For a moment, James looked like he might actually open up, might reveal whatever was truly eating at him. But then his face hardened again. "Just forget it," he muttered, pushing his chair back slightly. "Forget I said anything." The server returned to collect the bill and Amara's card, seemingly oblivious to the tension at the table. Or perhaps he was just professional enough to pretend not to notice. "Would you like a box for the rest of your cake?" he asked politely. James looked at the barely touched dessert between them. The sparkler had long since burned out, leaving just a thin metal wire sticking out of the elaborate creation that neither of them had enjoyed. "No," James said shortly. "Yes, please," Amara countered, not looking at her husband. "We'll take it home." The server nodded and walked away, leaving them once again in uncomfortable silence. Around them, the restaurant continued its normal evening rhythm. Plates being served, wine being poured, couples and families enjoying their meals without the weight that seemed to be crushing Amara and James. When the server returned with her card and the receipt, Amara signed it quickly, adding a generous tip despite the disastrous evening. It wasn't the server's fault that her anniversary dinner had turned into a battlefield. As she put her card back in her wallet, she noticed James staring at the cake between them, his expression unreadable. Something about his gaze made her uneasy, a feeling that things were about to get worse before they got better. The server returned with the boxed cake and placed it on the table between them. "Here you go, and happy anniversary once again," he said with a strained smile, clearly sensing the tension but maintaining his professional demeanor. Neither Amara nor James responded. The server lingered for a moment before retreating, leaving them alone with the beautifully packaged cake that now seemed like a mockery of their failed celebration. Amara reached for the cake box, but James's hand shot out, stopping her. "Why bother taking it home? It's not like we're going to eat it." "I paid for it," Amara said simply, trying to keep her voice level, "and it seems wasteful to just leave it." "Right, because you're so concerned about waste these days." His tone was cutting, unfamiliar. Amara drew back, stung by the venom in his voice. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." James leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming against the tablecloth. "Just that you seem to pick and choose what's worth your time and what's not." Amara felt like she was navigating a minefield, each step threatening to trigger another explosion. "James, can we just go home? We can talk about all of this there, without an audience." She glanced meaningfully at the nearby tables where several diners were now openly watching their interaction, some with concern, others with poorly disguised curiosity. "Why? So you can check your work emails as soon as we get through the door? Or maybe take a call from that boss of yours who thinks it's fine to contact you at all hours?" "That's not fair," Amara said, her own anger beginning to rise despite her efforts to stay calm. "You know I've been trying to establish boundaries at work. It's just been difficult with the new position." "Difficult," James repeated, the word dripping with sarcasm. "Yes, it must be so difficult being the rising star. The one everyone wants at their meetings, the one getting all the praise while your marriage falls apart." The raw pain behind his words caught Amara off guard. Was that really how he saw things? That their marriage was falling apart? The thought made her stomach clench with fear. "Our marriage is not falling apart," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. How had they gotten here? When had the distance between them grown so vast? "Isn't it?" James challenged. When was the last time we spent a whole day together without you checking your phone? When was the last time we really talked about anything other than work or house repairs or bills? Amara opened her mouth to respond but realized she didn't have an answer. He was right. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped connecting, stopped sharing the small moments that made up a life together. "I'm sorry," she said finally, meaning it. "I didn't realize how much this was affecting you. Affecting us." For a moment, James's expression softened, and Amara thought they might salvage something from this disastrous evening. But then his gaze shifted to something over her shoulder, and his face hardened again. Amara turned to see what had caught his attention. A couple at a nearby table was feeding each other bites of dessert, laughing softly, completely absorbed in each other. They looked like she and James had once looked. Happy, in love, present in the moment. "We used to be like that," James said, his voice barely audible. "We can be again," Amara offered, reaching across the table for his hand, but James pulled away, his eyes suddenly cold. "Can we? Or is it too late? Have we grown too far apart?" "Don't say that," Amara pleaded, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. "We're just going through a rough patch. All couples do." "A rough patch," James repeated. "Is that what you call it when your wife becomes a stranger? When she's more married to her job than to you?" "That's not true. I love you, James. That hasn't changed, hasn't it?" "Because love isn't just a feeling, Amara. It's actions. It's choices. And lately, all your choices have been about your career, not us." Before Amara could respond, a waiter passing by their table stumbled slightly, jostling James's arm. Wine sloshed in his glass, spilling a few drops onto the white tablecloth. "Sorry, sir." The waiter apologized quickly. But the small accident seemed to have broken something loose in James. He stared at the spreading red stain on the tablecloth, his jaw clenched, his breathing rapid. "James," Amara said cautiously, noticing the change in him. "Are you okay?" He looked up at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart race with unease. It wasn't just anger. It was hurt, betrayal, a cocktail of emotions she'd never seen in him before. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time." The controlled quietness of his voice frightened her more than if he had shouted. "Talk to me," she urged. "Tell me what's wrong so we can fix it." James laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Fix it? Like it's a leaky faucet or a broken appliance? Some things can't be fixed with a quick solution. Amara, some things break beyond repair." "Our marriage is not beyond repair," Amara insisted, fighting to keep her voice steady despite the growing knot of fear in her chest. "We love each other. We can work through this, can we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already made your choice, and it wasn't me." The unfairness of the accusation made Amara's temper flare. "That's ridiculous. I've never chosen anything over you. Yes, I've been busy with work, but that doesn't mean I don't value our marriage, doesn't it? Actions speak louder than words, Amara, and your actions have been pretty clear." "What actions?" "Getting a promotion? Working hard to build a future for us. How is that choosing something over you?" James's eyes darted to the cake box sitting between them, then back to her face. "It's not just the job. It's the late nights, the missed dinners, the way you light up when talking about work but can barely muster enthusiasm for our plans together." There was truth in what he was saying, and that made it harder for Amara to defend herself. She had been consumed by her new role, throwing herself into it with perhaps too much dedication. But it wasn't because she valued James less, it was because she wanted to prove herself, to secure their future. "I never meant to make you feel less important," she said, softening her tone, "and I'm sorry if I have. But that doesn't mean I don't love you or value our marriage." "Words," James muttered, shaking his head. "Just empty words." Now it was Amara's turn to feel the sting of unfairness. "That's not true. I show you I love you every day. Maybe not in the ways you want, but in the ways I can right now." "Right now," James repeated. "Always right now. Always some excuse why things have to be this way right now. But right now has been going on for months, Amara. When does it end?" The question hung between them, unanswerable because Amara didn't know. She couldn't predict when work would become less demanding, or when she would feel secure enough in her position to pull back. "I don't know," she admitted honestly, "but I promise I'll try harder to make time for us, to be present when we're together." James studied her face as if searching for something, Sincerity, perhaps, or commitment. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't seem to find it. "You know what the worst part is?" he said after a long moment. "It's that I don't even think you realize what you're doing. You've convinced yourself that all of this," he gestured vaguely, encompassing her career, their situation, "is for us, when really it's just for you." "That's not fair," Amara protested, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Everything I do is with us in mind, is it? Then why does it feel like I'm just an afterthought in your life? Someone you come home to when there's nothing else demanding your attention?" Each word felt like a physical blow. Was that really how she made him feel? Like an afterthought? The possibility made her sick with guilt. "I never meant to make you feel that way," she said, her voice small. "But you did," James replied, the anger in his voice giving way to something worse, resignation. "You did, and you didn't even notice." The finality in his tone scared her. It sounded like he was giving up, like he had already decided their marriage couldn't be saved. "We can fix this," she insisted, reaching for his hand again, despite his earlier rejection. "We can make time for each other, go to counseling if we need to. I'll set better boundaries at work. I'll make you a priority again." James didn't pull his hand away this time, but he didn't return her grip either. His hand lay limp under hers, unresponsive. "You say that now, but what happens the next time your boss calls? Or when there's a crisis at work that only you can handle? Will these promises matter then?" The question cut deep because Amara couldn't honestly say that she would always choose their relationship over work demands. She wanted to believe she would, but her track record suggested otherwise. "I'll try," she said finally, the inadequacy of the response painfully obvious to both of them. James nodded slowly, as if her answer had confirmed something for him. Then his gaze drifted to the cake box again, still sitting untouched between them. 5 years, he said quietly. 5 years, and this is where we end up. Strangers at our own anniversary dinner. "We're not strangers," Amara objected, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. James didn't respond. Instead, he reached for the cake box, opening it to reveal the elaborate dessert inside. The restaurant had even added a small chocolate plaque that read, "Happy Anniversary" in elegant script. "Remember our first anniversary?" he asked, his voice taking on a distant quality that made Amara uneasy. "We couldn't afford a fancy dinner, so we made spaghetti at home and bought a cake from the grocery store." "I remember," Amara said softly, relieved by the apparent change in tone. "We ate it on the floor of our apartment because we didn't have a dining table yet. You had sauce on your chin the whole time, and I didn't tell you because you looked so cute," James continued, a ghost of a smile playing at his lips for a moment. It seemed like they might salvage something from the evening after all, but then James's expression darkened again. "We were happy then. Poor but happy. Now we have everything we thought we wanted, the house, the careers, the money. But we lost something along the way, didn't we?" Amara felt a tear slip down her cheek. "We can find it again," she whispered. "If we try." James looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked down at the cake again. "You know what I think?" he said, his voice dangerously calm. "I think some things once lost can't be found again." And before Amara could respond, before she could even process what was happening, James pushed the cake box toward her with such force that it slid across the table and tipped over the edge, directly onto her lap. Amara gasped as the elaborate dessert landed on her burgundy dress, chocolate mousse and raspberry filling, smearing across the expensive fabric. The small chocolate happy anniversary plaque broke in half, one piece falling to the floor with a soft clink. The restaurant fell utterly silent. Every eye turned to their table, to the cake now ruining Amara's dress, to James's face twisted with an emotion that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite grief, but something in between. "James," Amara whispered, shock rendering her almost speechless. "What did you just do?" But James didn't answer. He just stared at her, at the mess he had created, as if he couldn't quite believe what he had done either. Around them, diners began to murmur. A few had their phones out recording the scene. The weight of their stares pressed down on Amara like a physical force, adding humiliation to her shock and hurt. 5 years of marriage, and it had come to this, a ruined dress, a public scene, and a husband who looked at her like she was a stranger. As she sat there, cake slowly soaking through to her skin, Amara had to face the possibility that James might be right. Maybe some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. Maybe they had already passed the point of no return without even realizing it. The thought brought fresh tears to her eyes, but she fought them back. She wouldn't cry here, not with all these people watching, not with phones recording every moment of her humiliation. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked directly at James, trying to see past the anger to the man she had married. But all she saw was a stranger wearing her husband's face, and the realization broke something inside her that she wasn't sure could ever be repaired. Time seemed to slow down as Amara sat there, cake soaking through her dress, the eyes of every diner in the restaurant fixed on her. The silence that had fallen in the immediate aftermath of James's action was now breaking, replaced by whispers and the unmistakable sound of camera phones clicking. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. Amara remained perfectly still, barely breathing as though movement might shatter whatever fragile control she was maintaining. Across the table, James's expression had already begun to shift from anger to something else, shock perhaps at his own actions. His mouth opened slightly as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. A server rushed over with napkins, his face a mask of professional concern, hiding what must have been intense curiosity. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry, can I help you?" The sound of his voice seemed to break the spell. Amara looked down at her ruined dress, at the chocolate and raspberry stains spreading across the burgundy fabric that she had chosen so carefully for this evening, for their anniversary. She touched the mess with trembling fingers, then looked back up at James. The restaurant manager appeared next, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a worried frown. "Ma'am, sir, perhaps you'd like to continue this in private? We have a small office in the back where the lady could clean up." The suggestion of retreat, of hiding away her humiliation, sparked something in Amara. No, she would not skulk away in shame. She had done nothing wrong. "Thank you," she said to the manager, her voice surprisingly steady. "But that won't be necessary." Carefully, she used the napkins to wipe the worst of the cake from her dress, though the stains remained, stark and unmistakable. Then she stood up, smoothing the fabric as best she could. James watched her warily, like someone might watch an unpredictable animal. He probably expected tears or screaming. Maybe he was waiting for her to throw something back at him, to create an even bigger scene. Instead, Amara took a deep breath and looked around the restaurant. Dozens of eyes quickly averted, pretending they hadn't been staring. Though a few people continued to watch openly, phones still recording. "I want to thank everyone here tonight," Amara said, her voice clear and carrying through the now quiet restaurant. "Thank you for witnessing what appears to be a pivotal moment in my marriage." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the reaction they had expected. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face flushing with what might have been shame. "My husband and I came here tonight to celebrate 5 years of marriage," Amara continued, her voice gaining strength. 5 years of building a life together, of supporting each other through good times and bad. Or at least that's what I thought we were celebrating. She looked directly at James now, meeting his eyes without flinching. "But it seems we've been living in different marriages. In my marriage, I've been working hard to build a future for us. In his, apparently, I've been neglecting everything that matters." James's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Around them, the restaurant remained hushed, everyone riveted by the drama unfolding before them. "I don't know when we started seeing things so differently," Amara said, more to James than to their audience now. "I don't know when my successes became something that threatened you, rather than something we celebrated together. But I do know this." She paused, gathering her thoughts, making sure the words that came next were exactly the ones she wanted to say. "I deserve better than this. I deserve a partner who is proud of my achievements, not resentful of them. I deserve someone who talks to me about problems instead of letting them fester until they explode in public humiliation." A woman at a nearby table nodded in silent support. An older man looked uncomfortably at his own wife, perhaps recognizing something in the dynamic playing out before him. "James," Amara said, softer now, addressing only him despite their audience. "I love you. I have always loved you. But love isn't enough if there isn't also respect. And what you just did," she gestured to her stained dress, "was deeply disrespectful, not just to me as your wife, but to me as a human being." For the first time since the cake had landed in her lap, James spoke. "Amara, his voice cracked. "I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air between them, insufficient and too late. I know you're sorry, Amara said. But being sorry doesn't fix this. Being sorry doesn't erase months of building resentment or the fact that you chose to humiliate me rather than talk to me. She reached into her purse and pulled out her credit card, placing it on the table. I'm going to pay for our dinner as you so clearly wanted me to. And then I'm going to go home. Not our home, but my sister's place. I think we both need some time to figure out what happens next. James's face paled. You're leaving me? Over a piece of cake? The question was so absurd, so completely missing the point that Amara almost laughed. No, James, not over a piece of cake. Over what the cake represents. Your contempt for me, your willingness to hurt me, your inability to communicate like an adult. She turned to the server who still hovered nearby. Could you please run my card? And I'd like to add an extra $100 to cover the cleanup and the disruption. The server nodded and took her card, clearly relieved to have something practical to do amid the tension. As she waited, Amara became aware of a strange thing happening around the restaurant. A woman at a table near the window had stood up and was looking at her with an expression of fierce approval. An older couple by the bar were nodding, the woman dabbing at suspiciously moist eyes. Even the bartender had paused in mixing a drink to watch her with something like respect in his gaze. They weren't judging her for causing a scene. They were admiring her restraint, her dignity in the face of humiliation. The server returned with her card and the receipt. Amara signed it, adding the promised tip, then tucked her card back into her purse. I'll call you tomorrow, she said to James, who still sat frozen in his seat, when we've both had a chance to cool down and think about what we want. She turned to leave, but before she could take a step, an elderly woman rose from her table and approached her. The woman must have been in her 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen much in their time. Excuse me, dear, the woman said softly. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but my Harold and I have been married for 52 years. And what you just did, keeping your dignity like that, was one of the bravest things I've ever seen. Amara blinked in surprise. Thank you, she managed. The woman leaned closer and lowered her voice. Never let anyone make you feel small, honey. Not even someone you love. She patted Amara's arm, then turned back to her table where an elderly man, Harold, presumably, was watching with a small smile. As Amara made her way toward the exit, something unexpected happened. A young woman stepped into her path, phone in hand. Amara tensed, expecting more unwanted recording of her humiliation. I'm sorry to bother you, the young woman said quickly, but I just wanted to say that the way you handled that was amazing. I've been in a relationship where I was made to feel small too, and seeing you stand up for yourself like that. She trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. Thank you, Amara said again, touched by the unexpected support. By the time she reached the restaurant door, 3 more people had approached her. A middle-aged man who said his daughter was going through something similar, a young couple who simply wanted to offer her a ride if she needed one, and a woman dining alone who pressed a business card into her hand and whispered, I'm a divorce lawyer if you need one. First consultation is free. Amara tucked the card into her purse without comment. She wasn't ready to think about divorce yet. Wasn't ready to admit that 5 years of marriage might end over a cake and a bill and months of unspoken resentment. Outside, the night air was cool against her flushed skin. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, unsure of her next move. She had told James she was going to her sister's place, but she hadn't actually called Tanya yet. And showing up on her doorstep in a cake-stained dress would require explanations she wasn't sure she was ready to give. As she debated what to do, the restaurant door opened behind her. Amara tensed, expecting James, but instead it was the elderly woman and her husband. We thought you might need a ride, dear, the woman said kindly. Our car is just in the lot there. That's very kind of you, but I couldn't impose it. Nonsense. Harold spoke up for the first time, his voice gruff but gentle. It's no imposition. A lovely young woman like you shouldn't have to call a cab in that state. Amara looked down at her ruined dress and felt a rush of gratitude for these strangers' kindness. Thank you. I'd appreciate a ride to my sister's if it's not too far out of your way. Not at all, the woman assured her. I'm Rose, by the way, and this is my husband, Harold. Amara, she replied, offering her hand. It's nice to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. As they walked to the parking lot, Rose kept up a stream of gentle chatter that required no response from Amara. giving her space to process what had just happened. Harold walked slightly ahead, keys in hand, a solid, reassuring presence. 52 years, you said? Amara asked suddenly, remembering what Rose had mentioned in the restaurant. Rose nodded. 52 years next month. Was it always easy? The older woman's laugh was warm and genuine. Oh, heavens no. There were times I could have happily pushed Harold into a lake, and I'm sure he felt the same about me. Harold grunted in amused agreement as he unlocked their car, a well-maintained older model sedan. But we always talked through our problems, Rose continued, more serious now. We never let the sun set on our anger, as they say. And we always treated each other with respect, even when we were furious with each other. Respect. The word echoed in Amara's mind. That was what had been missing in her interaction with James tonight. Not love. She still loved him, and she believed he still loved her. But somewhere along the way, respect had eroded, replaced by resentment and contempt. As she settled into the backseat of Harold and Rose's car, Amara felt tears threatening for the first time since the cake incident. Not tears of humiliation or anger, but of grief for what had been lost, and fear of what might come next. It's all right to cry, dear, Rose said softly, turning in her seat to look at Amara. Sometimes tears are the only honest response. And so, as Harold navigated the city streets toward Tanya's apartment, guided by Amara's occasional quiet directions, she finally let the tears come. She cried for the happy couple they had once been, for the future they had planned together, for the moment in the restaurant when something fundamental had broken between them. But mixed with the grief was something else, something that surprised her with its strength, a sense of her own worth, of her right to be treated with dignity, of her power to choose what happened next. By the time they pulled up in front of Tanya's building, Amara's tears had stopped. She thanked Harold and Rose, refusing their offer to wait with her until her sister came down. You've already done so much, she told them, more than you know. Rose pressed a slip of paper into her hand. Our phone number. Call us if you need anything. A ride, a friendly ear, or just a cup of tea with people who've been where you are. Amara nodded, too moved to speak. She watched as their car pulled away. Two strangers who had shown her more kindness tonight than her husband had in months. Then she turned toward her sister's building, took a deep breath and pulled out her phone to call Tanya. Whatever came next, reconciliation or separation, forgiveness or farewell, she would face it on her own terms, with the dignity she had discovered in herself tonight. In the most unlikely of circumstances, 2 weeks had passed since the night at the restaurant. 2 weeks of sleeping on Tanya's pull-out couch. 2 weeks of ignored calls from James, followed by texts that ranged from angry to apologetic to desperate. 2 weeks of explaining to coworkers why she was coming from a different direction in the morning, of wearing borrowed clothes until she'd finally gathered the courage to go back to the house when James was at work and pack some of her things. Amara sat at her sister's kitchen table, coffee growing cold between her hands as she scrolled through her phone. The video had gone viral, just as Tanya had warned her it might. Someone at the restaurant had uploaded their recording of the incident. Amara standing calmly in her cake-stained dress, addressing the room with dignity while James sat in stunned silence. The comment section was overwhelmingly supportive of her, with thousands of strangers praising her composure and strength. She didn't feel strong. Most days she felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped away everything inside her and left just enough to function. She went to work, she came back to Tanya's. She ate when her sister insisted, and she tried not to think about what came next. You can't avoid him forever, Tanya said, walking into the kitchen in her nurse's scrubs ready for her early shift. At some point you two need to talk. Amara sighed, putting down her phone. I know, I don't know what to say to him yet. Well, you better figure it out soon because he called me yesterday. Amara's head snapped up. He called you? Why didn't you tell me? Tanya shrugged, pouring coffee into her travel mug. Because you're not ready to hear what he had to say and I'm not getting in the middle of this. That's not fair. You're already in the middle of it. I'm living on your couch. And you can stay as long as you need to, Tanya said, softening. But sooner or later you need to decide what you want. Do you want to try to save your marriage? Or is this the end? It was the question Amara had been avoiding for 2 weeks. Did she want to save her marriage? The James who had pushed cake onto her dress in a crowded restaurant wasn't the man she had married. But was he still in there somewhere? And even if he was, could they find their way back to each other after what had happened? I don't know, she admitted quietly. Tanya came over and squeezed her shoulder. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. But just so you're prepared, he said he's coming by after my shift today. Around 4. What? Tanya, you can't just— I can, and I did. My apartment, my rules. And my rule is that you two need to talk face to face. Tanya grabbed her keys from the hook by the door. Don't worry, I'll be here too. I'm not leaving you alone with him if you don't want that. After Tanya left for work, Amara sat for a long time at the kitchen table, trying to imagine what she would say to James when he came. Should she be angry? Forgiving? Should she listen to what he had to say? Or tell him immediately that she wanted a divorce? The thought of divorce made her stomach clench. 5 years of marriage thrown away over one horrible night. But it wasn't just one night, was it? It was months of growing distance, of unspoken resentments, of choosing work over connection, until they'd become strangers sharing a home. Around noon, Amara's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, thinking it might be another reporter. Several had tried to contact her after the video went viral. But something made her answer. Hello, Amara? It's Rose from the restaurant that night. I hope you don't mind me calling. Amara felt a rush of warmth at the sound of the older woman's voice. Rose, of course I don't mind. How did you get my number? You texted us the next day, remember? To thank us for the ride. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all. It's good to hear from you. There was a pause, then Rose said, Harold and I have been thinking about you, wondering how you're doing. The simple concern in her voice made Amara's eyes fill with tears. I'm surviving, staying with my sister for now. And your husband? Have you spoken with him? Not yet. He's coming over today, actually. I'm not sure what I'm going to say to him. Rose hummed thoughtfully. You know, early in our marriage, Harold and I went through a rough patch. Nothing as public as what you experienced, but painful nonetheless. What happened? Amara asked, curious to spite herself. Harold lost his job, and I had to work 2 shifts at the diner to keep us afloat. He felt diminished, like he wasn't a real man if he couldn't provide. Instead of talking about it, he shut down, became bitter. We nearly fell apart. It sounded uncomfortably familiar. How did you fix it? We talked, really talked for the first time in months. And then we made a choice every day to see each other, to listen to each other, to treat each other with kindness even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And that worked? Rose laughed softly. Nothing works like a magic spell, dear. Marriage is a choice you make every day. Some days it's easy. Some days it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. The question is whether the person is worth choosing, day after day, even when they disappoint you. After Amara hung up, she spent the afternoon cleaning Tanya's already tidy apartment, needing something to do with her nervous energy. By 3:30, every surface gleamed, and she had changed her outfit 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that James had always liked. At precisely 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Tanya, who had arrived home 20 minutes earlier, gave Amara a questioning look. Ready? No, Amara thought, but she nodded anyway. When Tanya opened the door, Amara's first thought was that James looked terrible. He had lost weight and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He was clutching a small gift bag like a lifeline. Thank you for letting me come, he said to Tanya, his voice hoarse. Then his eyes found Amara, and everything else seemed to fade away. Hi. Hi, she replied, hating how her heart still leapt at the sight of him, even after everything. Tanya looked between them. I'll be in my room if you need me, she said pointedly to Amara. Just shout if you want company. Once they were alone, an awkward silence fell. James remained standing near the door as if unsure of his welcome. Amara perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. You look good, James said finally. You don't, Amara replied honestly. You look like you haven't been sleeping. He gave a hollow laugh. I haven't much. Turns out I don't sleep well without you beside me. The simple admission pierced Amara's defenses. She gestured to the armchair across from her. Sit down, James. You're making me nervous hovering by the door. He sat, placing the gift bag carefully on the coffee table between them. I've been trying to call you. I know. I wasn't ready to talk, and now? Amara took a deep breath. I'm still not sure what to say to you. What happened at the restaurant? It wasn't just about that night. It was about months of problems we've been ignoring. James nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. I know, and I've had a lot of time to think about my part in those problems. Your part? Amara, what I did was inexcusable. Throwing that cake at you, humiliating you in public, there's no justification for that kind of behavior. None. And I'm more sorry than I can say. The apology sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced it many times. But the pain in his eyes looked real. Then why did you do it? She asked, the question that had been haunting her for 2 weeks. James ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that made her heart ache with its normality. I was angry. Not just about that night, but about everything. Feeling ignored, feeling like your career had become more important than our marriage. But that's no excuse. No, it's not, Amara agreed. But it is a reason, and one we need to address if we have any hope of moving forward. Hope flickered in James's eyes. Does that mean you're considering giving me another chance? Amara chose her words carefully. It means I'm willing to talk about what went wrong and whether we can fix it. I can't promise more than that right now. He nodded, accepting this limited opening. That's fair. More than fair, considering. I've been thinking too, Amara said, about how I contributed to the distance between us. I did get caught up in my promotion, in proving myself. I let our connection take a backseat to my ambition. You were building your career. That's not wrong. No, but the balance was off. We both let it get off. And instead of talking about it, we let resentment build until it exploded. James reached for the gift bag, then hesitated. I brought you something. It's not a bribe or a quick fix, just something I wanted you to have. Curious despite herself, Amara took the bag. Inside was a small leather-bound book. She opened it to find photos. Dozens of them, from their early dating days through their wedding and the years of their marriage. James had written captions under each one, small memories or inside jokes they'd shared. I made it myself, he said quietly. One photo for each month we've been together. To remind us both of what we had. What we could have again, maybe, if we try. Amara's throat tightened as she turned the pages, seeing their history laid out in images, the young, happy couple they had been, the life they had built together. The last page held their most recent photo, taken a month before the restaurant incident at a friend's backyard barbecue. They were standing side by side, James's arm around her waist, both smiling but not quite looking at each other. Already drifting apart, though neither had admitted it yet. Under it, James had written, "The last photo of us before I nearly threw everything away. I hope it's not truly the last." Amara closed the book gently, running her fingers over its cover. "This must have taken you days." "I had time," James said with a slight smile. "Being alone in our house, I had nothing but time to think about what matters. And what matters, Amara, is you. Us. If you'll give us another chance, I promise to do better. To talk instead of letting things fester. To support your career instead of resenting it. To be the partner you deserve." Amara looked at him for a long moment, weighing his words against the hurt of the past weeks. The memory of cake sliding down her dress, the humiliation of those staring eyes in the restaurant, but also remembering the good years, the love they had shared, the future they had planned together. "I can't come home today," she said finally. "I'm not ready for that. But I think we could try counseling. See if we can find our way back to each other." The hope in James's face was almost painful to see. "Really? You'd be willing to try?" "On one condition," Amara said firmly. "We start with complete honesty. No more hiding feelings until they explode. No more pretending everything is fine when it isn't." "I can do that," James promised. "Starting now, I've missed you every single day. Our house doesn't feel like home without you. And I am so sorry for what I did." A tear slipped down Amara's cheek, the first she had allowed herself to shed in front of him since that night. "I've missed you too. Even while I was furious with you, I missed you. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't a guarantee that they would find their way back to what they had been. But it was a beginning, a small opening in the wall that had grown between them. Later, after James had left with a promise to research couples therapists and call her tomorrow, Tanya emerged from her room with a questioning look. "So, what happened?" Amara showed her the photo book, explained their tentative agreement to try counseling. "Are you sure about this?" Tanya asked, protective as always. "After what he did, I'm not sure of anything," Amara admitted. "But I think I think 5 years of marriage deserves at least an attempt to save it. And the man I saw today? He looked like the James though I married, not the stranger from the restaurant. That night, lying on Tanya's pull-out couch for what might be one of the last times, Amara thought about Rose's words. Marriage is a choice you make every day. Some days it's easy, some days it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Today had been hard. Tomorrow might be harder still. But for the first time in 2 weeks, Amara felt something like hope stirring in her chest. Not just for her marriage, but for herself. Whatever happened with James, she had found a strength in herself she hadn't known she possessed. The woman who had stood in that restaurant with cake on her dress and her head held high, that woman could face whatever came next. As she drifted toward sleep, Amara's phone pinged with a text message. It was from James. Good night. Thank you for today. Simple words, but they held the possibility of a new beginning. Amara typed back, good night, one day at a time. Then she put her phone away and closed her eyes, ready at last to dream of the future instead of reliving the past.